Out of the box, the SCX24's steering is pretty woeful. So in this video, we're going to fix that. Hey folks, welcome back to the video. Like I say, this time, I've spoken about this before, we're going to sort out the steering. Now the steering on the SCX24, as it comes out of the box as standard, in my opinion is terrible. Totally lackluster, has no oomph, there's all kinds of sloppiness going on in there, and it really doesn't make for a good trail experience, let alone a really tricky kind of rock crawl experience. So there are a few things you can do to improve that. We're going to start with the very simple stuff and work our way up a little bit. So we're going to do three things today. So the first thing you can do obviously is replace the servo. The biggest problem for me is not necessarily the servo itself, but the servo saver that it comes with. You can see how much you can move the steering without actually affecting the servo at all, and that's because there's so much wobble and flex in the links, and the servo saver is really, what's the word? Oversensitive maybe? I don't know, not sure. Anyway, it saves the servo a little bit too well, let's put it that way. So first thing I'm going to do is replace the servo. So if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know I've done all of this already, but I have put this back to stock for the purposes of today's video. In the steering at least, I've left the brass knuckles and bits and pieces on from last time. So what I'm going to do is go through the order in which I change things and the order in which I improve things, and you can see what you think as we go along and see if you want to go to the same lengths that I've gone to, or if you want to just stop partway through and you're quite happy. But these are the steps I'd recommend going through. So before we start, I'll just demonstrate what I mean by the terrible steering. So if you want to turn right, that's fine, works okay. If you want to turn left, does not work so well at all. That servo saver is kicking in, doing its job I suppose, but just doing it too well. Now you might not get this so much with the standard tyres, but as soon as you want to upgrade the tyres and go for something a little bit more grippy, or you're on a grippy surface like this felt mat, you're going to run into problems. Now as you start to drive, that steering sometimes improves a bit. There we go. So now it's okay. But a few turns later and it's back to being rubbish again. That's got to change. So, like I say, the first thing we'll do, and the first thing I did, and the first thing a lot of people do from what I can read on Facebook and the various different groups, is replace the servo. The one I'm going to replace it with is an EMAX ES08MD2. So it's a metal gear digital servo, but it comes pretty well recommended. The analog one is just as good. I think is a dollar or a pound or two cheaper, and I think these retail in the UK at the moment for about £8. So I'm going to get that installed. Now originally when I installed it on a 3D printed servo mount, which is pretty good. That's available on Thingiverse, so if you've got access to a 3D printer, you could print one of those and that would do the job just fine. For whatever reason, I decided I wanted to buy a metal one, so I've since been and bought the Samix EMAX compatible servo mount, and it's really nice little bit of kit. It's nicely, I think it's cast aluminium, I don't think it's machined, but it's great. Yeah, it looks good. It's a nice little bit of weight. It's a tiny little bit heavier than the 3D printed one I think, but there's not much in it. And it comes with the screws to fit it and all of that kind of thing. Before I fit this back in to the car, I just want to hopefully show you here that you do have to kind of trim a couple of the servo tabs off. Just above the mounting, the screw, you have to chip the mounting tabs away. And what I've also done as well, and this is for clearance, when the suspension compresses, that servo lifts up between the chassis rails. So without doing that, it fouls on the chassis rails or the bumper mounts. I've also just shaved a little bit off the bumper mount as well, and that gave it really good clearance. I am going to swap out the servo, come back and we'll show you the difference it's made. Right, so that's the EMAX mount installed and the EMAX Servo with just one of the standard EMAX Servo arms on there. Now straight away you'll notice the EMAX servos are set to have the servo arm parallel, not perpendicular to the servo. So because of the tooth pattern on the servo, you need to do quite a bit of trim. So as you can see there, it's right out of trim. But that is easily fixed. We'll just get it there or thereabouts for now. And you're probably going to want to remove the reduce the dual rates a bit here as well. Otherwise you are going to strain your servo. So we'll reduce the dual rates and then we'll give it a go. Okay, so that's not much, but as you can see already, that's better than it was. So let's just increase those dual rates a bit. And we kind of want to be listening out for the servo straining itself, which it's not doing there yet. Starting to do it a little bit there now. So I think we'll probably leave it about there. Now, as you can see, straight away that's already better. It's not getting bound up. If I put my finger there, it will push against it, whereas with the standard servo, the servo saver would have kicked in and that would not have done that at all. It's not having any problems with the grippiness on the felt. All good. But one thing you will see is there is still a lot of slop on those links. I mean, they are moving around all over the place, up and down. And that's pretty terrible. So that's the next thing we can fix. And that's a really easy and cheap fix. So to resolve that, you can simply put in a couple of tiny O-rings onto the ball sockets. And that just takes up some of this slop. But because they're rubber, it still gives it a bit of flexibility in there and it will allow it to move. So it shouldn't damage them and it shouldn't damage the servo, but it will take away some of that slop. So that's the next job. It's just a case of undoing the steering links. So there's one and there's the other. So what I'm going to use for mine technically aren't O-rings because I didn't have any O-rings, and it's a bit of a minefield out there trying to find exactly the right size. However, what I did have from one of my drones is a sort of rubber grommet used for mounting, soft mounting flight controllers. So I took one of those and chopped it about a bit, and that left me with basically 2 rubber O-ring grommets that I can use. And essentially, hopefully you can see this, this ball socket here has got loads of space at the bottom of it, and that's where we're going to put the little rubber O-ringy thing. There you go, so there's one, and you can see straight away that will still move in there, but it's not flopping and slopping about all over the place. So we'll do the other one. Okay. So that's now in place as well, so that's 2 in, and that's just taken away all the kind of wibbly wobbliness. So we'll screw those back into place. And as you can see, that's taken away all that sloppiness. Now you could go a stage further and put them on either end of this top steering arm, but I really don't think you need to. So that is super simple. So up to now we've spent a grand total of about £8, or what's that, I suppose that's $10 roughly, $10 or $11 to get the steering from. Absolutely dreadful to pretty solid. You know, I think that's going to be pretty good, I think. Give it a good waggle. Can't do that with stock. The next stage, you don't really need to do, to be perfectly honest. I think you could probably get away with that for quite a while. But if you wanted to go that next stage, which I've done, again, for not a lot of money, you can install aluminium steering arms and steering links. Now these are generic China branded ones that I got off Amazon. You can buy Trial, Hot Racing, Yeah Racing, they all do them. I guess Samix probably do them as well. They were pretty, again, quite cheap. I'll put some links to all of this stuff in the description, but they were next to nothing on Amazon. I think they were about £8 or £9. Can't remember exactly. I'll put it on the screen somewhere, and of course you'll be able to see those in the links. They come in different colours. I chose red at the time because I'm impatient, and red were the ones that I could get on next day delivery. I will probably replace those with some black ones at some point. These just go that next stage further, so there is still a bit of flex in the steering because of the plastic. Not a lot anymore, hardly any now that we've put those rubber grommets on, but just enough that I think it's worth just taking that out. Plus the aluminium ones are likely to just be a bit more hard wearing over time. So that one is mildly more complicated. And the way I've done this in the past is to take the servo arm off, just because it's a little bit easier to do it that way. And the reason for that is that the links mount to the rear of the servo arm, so they're just a little bit of a pain to screw into place. So pop that off, and then we can take these steering links off. And one of the lovely things about these SCX24s is these jobs are just like 5 minute jobs. Really simple to do. A little bit fiddly because everything's really tiny, but really simple to do. If you're going to get into RC and the RC crawling hobby particularly, these things are a great little starter. You can upgrade them. They're super easy to fix, but they're super simple as well. So they're not massively complicated. They've not got uber complicated gears, and the worm drive differentials work really well. I know some people say they're a bit old hat, but they work really well, especially at this scale. Get that steering servo nice and tight on there. It does come with the Links kit, come with all the hardware you need, including actually some little rubber grommets to go either side. So they're using the same technology here. And there we have the finished article. That's as far as I've taken it so far with steering, and that's as far as I've felt I've needed to. I get all the travel that I can possibly get. I don't think there is any more to be got out of these. If you know a way, let me know in the comments. I would be interested to get a bit more steering travel if possible, but certainly I think the limit we're hitting there is that the steering link hits the diff cover. So I don't think there's any more space to be had there. Now the next thing that I was going to do, but didn't, I mentioned this in a previous video, was an aluminium steering arm, or steering horn, servo horn. And it was this one, so it was the extra speed aluminium 15 tooth EMAX Servo horn for Axial SCX24. I don't know what that is, what that's like with other SCX24s, but with the C10, don't fit. So save yourself the £8 or $10, whatever it was, because I'll put some photos up, because I took some photos of this earlier. I'm not going to try and refit it now, but it simply doesn't fit. It sticks out so far because it's quite thick. It sticks out so far that it fouls the bumper mount. So without chopping that bumper mount out, this thing's not going to fit. And also the other problem with it is it's so far out that this top steering link is at a very strange angle. So I'm not going to bother with it. Now it might work with a deadbolt, might work with a Jeep, because they have different bumper mounts, but for this one, for the C10, don't bother with this. I am going to tuck that away in my little spares box, because I certainly see another one of these in my future, and we'll see if it fits on that one when it arrives. So there we have it. That is the old stock servo with the frankly terrible overzealous servo saver removed, the old links removed because they're plasticky and bendy, replaced with aluminium links, an EMAX servo and a Samix aluminium servo mount, or you could use the 3D printed one, which was fine. That's going to do it for this video. I hope you found that useful and I hope it helps. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up because it really helps the video. If you haven't subscribed already, please do consider doing so. We're getting pretty close to the 1,000 subscribers now. Quite like to hit that mark. Didn't really ever care about it that much, but now it's in sight. I'm quite keen to hit it. We will come back for one more video on this SCX24, and that will be an interesting and slightly experimental one. So I have plans to swap the positions of the battery and the ESC, and that's for weight distribution. So I want the battery up front because it's heavier, and I want the ESC at the back because it's lighter. I've found a 3D printed low CG battery tray on Thingiverse, and I have created on Fusion 360 a 3D printed tray for the ESC to go on the back. I haven't tried them yet. That's an experiment for a rainy day, which by the sounds of it outside we're already getting. So I'm going to have a play with that. If that works out, I'll come back with another video. And I'm also going to show you a little bit about the lights that I did. I keep promising to do that. So I will do a video on that one at some point soon. In the meantime, we'll see you on the next one.